What says the defense?
Your Honor, the next witness the defense is going to call is Daniel Crawford.
If you'll step forward, sir, raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear and promise that everything you tell us here today to be the truth?
Yes, sir.
Please have a seat. Thank you. When you're ready, sir.
Mr. Crawford, good morning.
Good morning.
What I need you to do, sir, is I need you to sit up a little bit, sit closer to that microphone.
Yes, sir.
And if you wouldn't mind looking at the jury when you talk, because you have a very soft voice and everyone needs to hear you, okay?
All right, yes, sir.
What I want you to do, first of all, is just introduce yourself to the jury, and then I want you to spell your name for the lady sitting to your left.
My name is Daniel Bernard Crawford, DANIEL-CRAWFRD.
And how old are you, sir?
30 years old, sir.
Okay. And I want to go ahead and talk with you about this now. Have you ever been convicted of a felony before?
Yes, sir.
How many times?
5 times.
Okay. And what I want to talk with you about is someone named Joshua Ellington. Do you know who Joshua Ellington is?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How do you know who Joshua Ellington is?
Past roommate of mine.
Okay. And was that in the Polk County Jail?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And when you were a roommate of Mr. Ellington's, did you have, on occasion, did you speak with Mr. Ellington about a homicide charge that he was in jail for?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And did Mr. Ellington say anything to you about his involvement in the homicide?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What did he tell you about his involvement in the homicide?
That he did shoot the guy.
Okay. And did he tell, how many times did he make this statement to you?
Over at least 10 times he repeated it to me.
Okay. Now, do you know where this homicide occurred?
Start with an A. I forgot the city name.
Okay. If you saw a prior statement you gave, would that refresh your recollection as to where it occurred?
Yes, sir.
Okay. May I approach?
Yes, sir.
And this is page 12, lines 5 through 7. What I want you to do is read 5 through 7 and look at that. Do you remember where that was?
Yes, sir.
You said it began with an A, so where did it?
Armdale.
Now, how long were you in the cell with Mr. Ellington?
30 days. Okay. At least about 30 days.
Okay. And can you tell the jury what dates that was, or what time of the year it was?
Somewhere around August to September.
Of what year?
2016.
Okay. Had Mr. Ellington just been arrested on that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, while you were in the jail, did you ever read Mr. Ellington's discovery?
No, sir.
Okay. Did you ever look at any paperwork he had at all?
No, sir.
Okay. Are you only basing what you know today on what Mr. Ellington told you?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, may I have a moment?
Yes, sir.
No further questions.
What says the state?
I have some cross, Judge. Good morning, Mr. Crawford. Now, at the time that you provided information to law enforcement regarding what Josh is alleged to have said to you, you were in jail facing a life sentence, correct?
Your Honor, I have an objection. May we approach?
Please approach.
Okay, sidebar. Let's take a break. Get you back into the courtroom right after this. Stay with us. Okay, sidebar breaking up. Will Christy Ducharme be able to ask Daniel Crawford about his criminal history and what he was facing at the time? Let's listen.
Now, Mr. Crawford, just to be clear, you were in jail on a life felony.
Yes, ma'am.
And you had just met Josh Ellington. You didn't know him before he allegedly gave you this information.
No, ma'am.
You told law enforcement, I think you wrote them a letter on the 6th of September, and you told law enforcement that Josh had only been in your cell for about a week at that point.
He probably was in there more than a week, but I probably told him a week, but it was probably more than a week.
Okay, well, he was arrested on August 22nd, so maybe 2 weeks?
Yes, ma'am.
And when law enforcement came and spoke to you, they recorded your interview, did they not?
Yes, ma'am.
And they asked you whether Josh indicated anybody else was involved, and you also told them that according to Josh...
Objection, Your Honor. May we approach?
Please approach.
Okay, another sidebar. They're trying to get this, deal with this witness. The prosecutor is. Let's bring in Molly Parmer, criminal defense attorney extraordinaire, joining us by Skype. Molly, this witness could be pivotal for the defense, but anybody with an orange jumpsuit that comes in has issues. What's your take?
Well, I think this trial has been a parade of witnesses with issues. I mean, Ellington made inconsistent statements. He's certainly incentivized to lie.
Molly, I'm going to cut you off. We'll just listen to Judge Harb.
You'll be taken back to the jury room. We'll be with you as quickly as we can. Take the jury.
All right.
Maybe seated.
Give me 1 second. I need to go back to the notes. All right, State, go ahead and proffer the question. I think the question was as to Mr. Ellington indicated regarding somebody else's involvement. Go ahead.
Now, Mr. Crawford, when law enforcement came and spoke to you and interviewed you, they asked you whether Mr. Ellington, during the time he was talking to you about his involvement in the murder, whether anybody else was involved. You told the detective that he did indicate somebody else was involved. Do you remember telling the detective that?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you told the detective that the other person that Josh indicated was involved was a person by the name of Dre, and that Dre had gunshot residue on his arm. Isn't that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you.
Defense?
Mr. Crawford, did Mr. Ellington ever say to you how he knew that this Dre individual had gunshot residue on his arm?
He said he saw his cousin at court, and he told him that.
So his cousin told him that Dre had gunshot residue
Yes,
on his
sir.
arm.
Yes, sir.
And who is your understanding that this Dre is?
Gary?
Okay. So you believe that Dre is Gary?
Yes, sir.
Does he go by any other name?
So I don't believe, but that's what he told me. His name was Gary.
Okay. So what you're saying is that Joshua Ellington told you that his cousin's name was Dre, but it was also Gary.
Yes, sir.
And that Gary and Dre are the same person.
Yes, sir.
Okay. But specifically what he said is that Gary told Joshua Ellington that he had, or Dre, who's Gary, told Joshua Ellington that he had gunshot residue on
Yes,
his
sir.
arm. Okay.
Judge, I do have some follow-ups. That's not what you told law enforcement, though, Mr. Crawford. You never told law enforcement that Josh Ellington told you that Gary told him that Dre had gunshot residue on his arm. You told law enforcement when they asked specifically, did he talk about any of the other guys involved? Your answer was, oh, Dre. I believe that's his cousin. I believe Dre. Okay, and that's all. And what did he say about him? He was saying something about Dre, the one that got the gunpowder on his arm. That's all he said about Dre. Got the what? Gunpowder, gun residue or whatever. Yeah? And you said on his arm. He was saying that Dre got it on his arm, but they didn't know. They don't. He was saying they don't got nothing on me because he's like, I don't got no gunpowder on my arm, but he's saying that Dre got the gunpowder on his arm. You never told the detective that Josh got this information from Gary, who got it from somebody else, did you? You told the detective that Josh told you this.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
One question.
Go ahead.
Did the detectives ever ask you how you knew this?
No, sir.
Okay.
Okay. Take Mr. Crawford to the holding cell. Defense?
Your Honor, I don't think we're dealing with inferences anymore. It's very clear what the state is asking Mr. Crawford to testify to is hearsay, and it's not admissible.
Say, do I understand Mr. Crawford to say that information that he was just proffered was told to him by somebody's cousin in court?
That's what he just told Mr. Chastain, but that's not what he told the detectives. And, Your Honor, he was specifically asked by the detectives what Josh told him about his involvement in the murder. It was very clear to him what they were talking to him about. He's the one that wrote the letter to the detectives.
But if his answer is, whether he mentioned that to law enforcement or not, but if his answer is, I got this information from, I don't think he said my cousin, he said his cousin in court, right?
The cousin,
No.
okay.
Talking to the state, and I'll hear from
Judge,
you.
that's a jury question. That goes to the weight, not to the admissibility, because obviously that's not what he told the detective
How
at
do you
the
get
time.
over the hearsay objection? That's my question.
Judge, it's a credibility issue. My argument is that that's not what he told the detective. He never told the detective that this information came from somebody else. He told the detective that this information came directly from Josh. He never said that Josh said it was from somebody else. I have a copy of the transcript, Judge, if you'd like to read it. That's a determination for the jury to understand and to decide whether what he's saying today is true or not. But and the other thing I'd point out, Judge,
Did he tell law enforcement, and I think I know the answer to this, but I'm not sure. Let me just wrap my head around it, just to make sure. Did he tell law enforcement that Joshua Ellington told him about Dre? Anything about Dre being
Yes.
involved? Did he mention that?
yes,
And did he then tell law enforcement the source of that information?
Josh. He specifically says Josh tells him this.
Defense?
Your Honor, Josh told Daniel Crawford, but what the court has to focus on is the source of the information that was given to the source of that information that was given to Joshua Ellington. And what that is, and the detectives never clarified that. We clarified it in the proffer. What that is an individual telling Joshua Ellington that about gunshot residue. That statement is hearsay. It cuts off right there. You can't bootstrap a hearsay statement as admissible evidence and then turn around and argue that it goes to the weight, not the admissibility. If it's hearsay, there's no exception to it, and it should be excluded, Your Honor.
Defense, did I hear the state just tell me that Mr. Crawford, told law enforcement that Josh told him about the gunshot residue? Josh Ellington told him about the gunshot residue?
What he said, Your Honor, was that he said something about that Dre, the one that got the gunpowder on his arm or something. So yes, he said that Joshua Ellington told him that, but nobody ever explored what the source of that information was until the proffer. The proffer is clear that the source of Joshua Ellington's information is hearsay.
Even Ellington's hearsay.
And it's even Ellington's hearsay, Your Honor. I mean, it's inadmissible on two levels.
And Judge, I would just point out the obvious that the defense has already got into Ellington's hearsay statements. The state shouldn't be prohibited from asking the full extent of the statements that Crawford made to law enforcement. The other thing I'd point out is that the defense, in introducing the letter by Daniel Crawford and the testimony of Daniel Crawford, is going to argue that Daniel Crawford never said anything about gunshot residue based on my mistaken question to Josh Ellington during my redirect. So for several reasons, the state should be permitted. But the main reason is, Judge, this is the entire content of what Mr. Crawford told law enforcement. And again, it is very clear to him what they are asking him about. They specifically asked him, did Josh say to you anybody else was involved? Yes, he did. What did he say? He said Dre. Dre had gunshot residue on his arm.
All right. Anything else, defense?
Your Honor, our hearsay exception is a prior inconsistent statement. The state doesn't have one.
And would it be fair to say this question to the defense that this is the first time that Mr. Crawford is saying that somebody else told him this? That somebody else told Ellington the information that Ellington told him?
This is the first time it's been asked, Your Honor.
Okay. All right. I'm going to allow the state to get into that. And then it's going to come full circle. And his definition of Dre is Gary. Quite frankly, I don't know how that helps the state, but that's for the jury to determine, to be honest with you. So anyway, bring him back.
Sure.
And state, this is not going to go beyond.
Okay, as they bring back the witness and the jury, we'll take a break, get you back into the courtroom right after this. Welcome back. The jury's still not back. The witness is Daniel Crawford. He's talking to the judge. Let's listen in.
Something about your honor or something like that. Did I hear you correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What is it you wanted to say, sir?
Okay, I came here to tell the truth about what happened and whatever, and I'm already getting into fights and everything about this in the jailhouse, and then to sit up here, it's not for me right now. This ain't for me. This is too much for me, and then it seems like I'm being probably made a liar, or that I was looking for a deal, or that ain't what I did that for.
Okay. Nobody's going to ask you any more about deals or your case or what have you. They've asked the question that they need to ask. There's some follow-up questions they want to ask you. You're still under oath, and you expect to tell the truth. Okay?
Yes, sir.
So when the jury comes back in, Mr. Sham will have some questions, and after that, I suspect maybe the defense will have some questions. Listen carefully to the question and answer it the best you can.
Yes, sir.
You understand that, sir?
Yes, sir.
We're ready.
All right.
Yeah, what's that?
No, bring in the jury. I'll hear you later.
Okay, jury coming in. This was a big win for the state of Florida here because the witness, Daniel Crawford, basically says that somebody named Dre had gunshot residue on their arm. Well, we all know that Andre Warner is the defendant, and his nickname was Dre. The defense will try to switch it to another person, Gary, but boy, this was a big win for the prosecution. Let's listen in.
Detectives came to talk to you. They asked you if Josh Ellington told you anybody else was involved, didn't they?
Yes, ma'am.
And you told them that, yes, he did mention somebody else was involved, didn't you?
Yes, ma'am.
You told them that he mentioned a person by the name of Dre, and that Dre had gunshot residue on his arm.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Crawford.
What says the defense?
Redirect, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Crawford, I do want to ask you a couple questions, okay? And the first question I want to ask you is this. The state asked you about the situation that you were in when you were in jail at the time. Remember that question?
Yes, sir.
All right. When you stepped forward to the police, were you asking for a deal or were you seeking any help at all?
No, sir.
Okay. And the second thing I want to ask you about is this. Now, when you were talking about Dre and who Ellington told you had gunshot residue, who did you understand?
Judge, I would object to speculation.
Overruled.
Who did you understand this Dre individual to be?
Gary.
Gary who?
And crazy cousin.
Okay. So you believed, in your understanding from talking to Joshua Ellington, was that Dre and crazy cousin were the same person?
Yes, sir.
Okay. May I have a moment, Your Honor?
Yes, sir.
Where did Ellington say to you, where did Ellington tell you that he got that information from about the gunshot residue?
From court.
Okay. And explain that a little bit more.
He said that he saw his cousin at court, and his cousin told him that Dre had the residue on him, that he didn't have the residue on him.
Okay. So that his cousin, so Gary Gray told him that?
Yes, sir.
No further questions, Your Honor.
I have a couple of cross questions, just a couple to address what he's just testified to.
No, ma'am. May Mr. Crawford be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Any objection from the state?
No.
You're excused, sir. Have a good day. What says the defense?
Your Honor, may we approach for housekeeping?
Please approach.
Okay, is this it for the defense? Or will they bring on another witness? Will they bring the defendant onto the stand? Molly Parmer still with me. Molly, let's first talk about Daniel Crawford, the man in orange who just took the stand. Boy, this was a big ruling by the judge to allow the prosecution to continue to inquire, bringing up basically what yesterday was the bombshell, gunshot residue potentially on a guy named Dre's arm. How bad was this for the defense?
Oh, I think it's pretty bad. With a trial like this, where you have so many witnesses with credibility issues, like can we trust Ellington? Can we trust Bustos? Can we trust Crawford? And then you have inconclusive expert testimony. A lot of the experts weren't able to kind of say definitively, we have the DNA or we have this gunshot residue. What we have left is that jail phone call. That jail phone call that really kind of gives the state what they need, possibly, to prove their case if the jury interprets it a certain way. And now we have this extra kind of layer to that jail phone call where Mr. Warner talks about gunshot residue coming from Daniel Crawford, who was supposed to be the defense star witness in some ways, pointing the finger at somebody else. So no, I don't like that at all for the defense. I think that it is a bit of a very important witness at this point for the state, given that reference.
Yeah, it sounds like the judge just sent the jury out of the room again. Why don't we get a break in and see what is next for the defense case? We'll be right back after this.